Good morning and welcome back to your talk show on WCLO. My name is Jim Lyke, substituting for Tim Bremmel this Friday morning. And joining me in the studio for this half hour is a true Renaissance man. I think it's safe to call you that, Yuri.
Bob's Custom Windows and Siding. For windows, seamless siding, and all sorts of doors. Do like the jingle says. Call 756-0735.
Good morning and welcome back to your talk show on WCLO. My name is Jim Lyke, substituting for Tim Bremmel this Friday morning. And joining me in the studio for this half hour is a true Renaissance man. I think it's safe to call you that, Yuri.
What do you mean? This is. I thought I was here to talk with Tim Bremmel. I'm out of here.
Well, most people probably would have the same response.
Just kidding. Hi, Jim. How are you?
I'm great, Yuri. Thanks so much for joining us. Yuri Rashkin, who has worn many hats here in Janesville, been a member of the City Council, Rock County Board, fabulous musician, and I understand you're rejoining the improv group to do some music.
That is right. And actually that reminds me to say thank you, Jim, for nominating an incredible person for Rock County Arts Hall of Fame, Teresa Wynn, we write music for your movies, and you nominated her. And I thought there's only one person possibly more deserving, and that's Laura Schuler. And Laura Schuler also got recognized. So this was really just incredible. And thanks to you, thanks to everybody who nominated. And I am replacing Laura when I am doing comedy improv. So good people. Thank you.
It is quite the close-knit theater and arts community here in Janesville, is it not?
It is, and I think over the years it's been really great to play my small part in it, from time to time, and it's really great people. So everybody come out for comedy improv.
And what bands are you in at the moment? I know you're doing some things in Rockford, it appears.
Well, thank you for reminding me of that, because actually I'm playing with one of my bands tonight at Grand Avenue Pub. The band is called That Band. And we do all sorts of kind of easy listening things because we have just absolutely incredible singer, Lachelle Louie, and we can do things like Sade Smooth Operator. So, that's not often that you can do that. So it's really incredible. So we invite everybody to come down at 8 o'clock. Otherwise, make sure to, get Teresa Wynn, Tess, and the Wingmen scheduled for all your other needs. So, yes, there is music, and I'm not in all the bands at all. And I'm just, again, it's almost like therapy. It's like self-care. What do you do for self-care? I play music now.
And among the many projects that you have going is the Rashkin Report, which is a Russian language, I guess, podcast. Is that the best way to describe what you do? Podcast, newscast?
Anything. YouTube channel. It's mostly, I think, based on YouTube, even though there's different platforms. But it's kind of a story it's a journey in a way, because I really, I have certain talents, certain things that interest me, and I try to do them as much and realize my talents to whatever extent possible. And so wanting to do music, I play music. I want to, talk on the radio, so I started a YouTube channel. And I like American politics. I think it's a really cool topic, so I've been talking about it in Russian. And one thing led to another. For the last 3 years, I've been a regular presence in Ukrainian news media, explaining to them American politics about our support for Ukraine and what's happening, because there's, as you may have noticed, there's a lot of disinformation. And so because of the, so there's disinformation in Ukraine as well. And it turns out that since I have this Russian language YouTube channel that, have a certain amount of credibility, became a guest that to this day they call me and I give interviews and I try to explain what's going on in the most sensible way I possibly can.
And your podcast, it looks like it's got close to 110,000 subscribers at the moment.
You are correct. Yes, I'm waiting for that silver button to arrive from YouTube. I don't know where it's supposed to be after 100,000. It's been a little while.
Oh, I'm not even aware of a silver button. You get a silver button of some sort?
Yes, you get like a plaque. It's a big deal.
Oh, wow, it is a big deal.
I don't know that I can make it to 1 million, which is like the next button, but silver button is nice.
So it's a Russian language podcast, and I'm wondering how much of your audience is Russian speakers based in America, and how much of it are people watching from overseas to get the American perspective on what's happening in Ukraine and Russia?
Very good point, and a good question. YouTube gives us a lot of data. And so I know that my countries where I'm number 1, 2, and 3 is consistently Ukraine, U.S., and Russia. And sometimes they change depending on who is kind of hot in the news. And also, Russia has been lately cutting down on YouTube visibility, and so they kind of went down. Ukraine went up, and also because people in dictator societies use VPNs, which allow people to access YouTube, but from other countries. So I have like a bunch of viewers from strange countries all over the place where like, really? But maybe they're all just, somewhere else behind the new Iron Curtain. But there's really a lot of interest in Ukraine, absolutely, to what is going on. And there's a certain amount of growing amount of interest in the United States as well, because there really is very little alternative to a point of view that people are presented in Russian language. Russian culture, Russian language, Russian media is extremely conservative by its nature, patriarchal, some might say, and so on. And so me not being of that persuasion makes me kind of a different, unique voice, which on some level means that I have a small market potential because only a few people kind of, are willing to consider those kinds of concepts. Think about morals, for instance, because in repressive societies, you don't want to think about morals. They just get in the way. And so when I talk about morals, it's kind of like turning on a light bulb in a messy house. People are like, no, turn down the light. No, it's horrible. So there is a little bit of that experience, and that's fine because I think in the end, it's a cost of speaking out. And just being able to express myself is really, again, I consider important. And since, I don't have any USAID financing or anything, I just sing about my pride. I know I can just sit and talk about what a horrible thing is happening that we're like now teachers and police officers and like civil servants in Ukraine are without paychecks because we decided that we're no longer going to help other countries because that's charity and we don't do charity anymore. That's not our thing anymore. So I think that there's interest on all sides for slightly different reasons, and the more dire the situation grows, the higher are the views, which is great.
So the average person sitting in Kiev, for example, where are they getting their news? Are there foreign sources for the news? Can they get the BBC there in Russian? I mean, other than, having access to the service that you provide, where are they getting their news and their information about what's happening within their own country and in Russia and America?
That is a really interesting question, Jim. And I was fortunate enough to spend my summer vacation a few days in Kiev this past August. And I felt like Roy Andrew Chapman, like Indiana Jones, just going to Ukraine. Like, they asked me, like, what does your family would like back? I was like, me. If I just could come back from Ukraine, they'll be thrilled. So it was interesting because Kiev is really gets shelled all the time. And even though people always have notifications, because of course there's an app and people have apps and it tells you that there's a, attack coming, your phone starts beeping. But if it happens all the time or if it happens at night, you kind of stop paying attention because otherwise you just can't function if you're always running to the bomb shelter. And so being there kind of made me feel like I was surrounded by people who were kind of fatalistic in their approach, in the sense that a rocket could come out any time. It was really incredible, just a very powerful experience. And the news that they get, they've kind of given up on their TV news because at the beginning of war, Ukrainian government put together all the TV channels into news marathon, where they're given X number of hours, and they're just like the TV government state propaganda, which in a way is like you got to have it because you got to have some positive news. You got to say things are happening, things are going well. But in the way, people kind of tune it out. And people started to shift to other sources of information. And of course, there's a lot of conspiracies. But YouTube started to play a big role. And of course, Telegram, which is a social media platform we're not even really familiar with. But Telegram is huge in Russian language space, and YouTube. And so that's where people go. And you have a lot of anonymous information. You have a lot of unsourced information. And people become very conspiratorial minded, and they grab for whatever suits their biases. It's all of that kind of stuff that can happen in a society without strong journalistic ethic, because you have people who are clearly spreading disinformation who continue to get invited because they get a lot of views on YouTube. They get a lot of, it's a lot of visibility, it's a lot of likes, a lot of clicks. And so a lot of that kind of thing is happening as well. But I think people are trying to kind of, they want to know what is happening because they feel they need help. They feel like it's going to be probably difficult to impossible for Ukraine to survive without allies. And when I was in Ukraine, they have really this great culture of coffee shops in Lviv and restaurants, and they're all themed, and people invest time, money, and energy into these really cool concepts. And there's this one that is like an underground for guerrilla warfare, because that was a big part of Ukraine's resistance, is guerrilla warfare, when they would like come out from the forest kind of a thing. And on one hand, it's a cool restaurant. On the other hand, that's not a way to live. And so I think allies are really crucial and important, and so they want to know that, of course, if there's no allies, then it would be nice to be in NATO. But if there's no NATO, then they would like to have their nuclear weapons back, because they feel like we, under President Clinton, said, there's this Budapest memorandum. Please, we'll guarantee that you'll be fine, but just give us your nuclear weapons. And Ukraine said, okay. And now they're like, okay, we have no nuclear weapons, and where's the protection? And so this is, kind of leading us towards Ukraine getting more nuclear weapons, as everybody trying to rush to this. And so, but Ukrainians have need for that foreign interference and foreign support. And so I think that's the main thing, that's a strong thing that they're looking for, even though they understand that the only guarantee of their security and safety is their own armed forces.
So in talking to, people over in Ukraine, what's the prevailing opinion about Zelensky? I mean, do they think he's been an effect? Okay, well, you're about to do a spit take on
I
the water.
Almost did. Wow, that was a good one, Jim.
I'm guessing that
right.
I'm guessing that Zelensky is not necessarily a popular leader among his people.
It really is interesting, because Ukrainians have this tradition of hating their leader. Like whoever's in charge, they go, what a loser. Mm-hmm. It's clearly the most corrupt person in the country. We don't trust him, and so, and in fact, when I tell them about our elections and what's happening here, they go, wow, this really reminds us of what happened when Zelensky was elected in 2019. I go, really? And so they don't really have a high opinion of him, but at the same time, he chose to stay and fight. And because he chose to stay and fight, he saved the country. And the country is fighting because in the beginning, I feel like there was just really strong push on the leadership level to stand up. And then he really been a powerful speaker for Ukraine. But at the same time, there's over a long period of war. Even though at the beginning, I feel like there was more unity, there's a lot of questions. And there's but the concern is at the same time that the country cannot have new elections until war is over, because it's difficult it's impossible to conduct elections during war. So having new elections where it could be somebody replacing Zelensky, quite likely somebody who Kremlin just likes. So it's kind of another way to kind of win the war is to have somebody, your person win the election. And for that, war needs to stop. But and those are some of the questions that are being raised right now. But I think people are really torn because they don't really care for Zelensky or any president. Everybody's flawed, and Ukrainians clearly understand that. But at the same time, they're afraid of Russia, and they're afraid of Russian influence and Russian occupation. I think that they're not fighting because, I don't know, they like Putin, they don't like Putin, is that they just know that there's going to be genocide. That there's going to be ethnic cleansing, and then people in Ukraine who are fall now under Russian command become part of Russian army, and they're so this is a really dreadful scenario on that level as well. So what Zelensky says right now is that U.S. and everybody else should step up and help, and I kind of have a hard time arguing with him on that one.
So obviously there aren't regular elections. There isn't a regular election cycle.
They suspended elections because of the war.
Okay. Among the people that you spoke to, is there a hope that they can hold out, or is there a resignation that it's just a matter of time before the war is over and they're the losers?
I believe that people in Ukraine really believe in Ukraine. And people there really feel that they're capable of winning. And when I was there, one of the things that really just made me tear up, because I found myself in tears all the time, because I realized that seeing human spirit just makes me cry. And seeing these women who every morning gather in their area, like senior center or something, and they make masking tarps for their troops, and it's just they set up the ropes, or and then they tie little ribbons on them. That's it can be thrown over tarp, over tanks, over whatever, and they do this every day, and they sing songs, and it is almost like a self-therapy through music. But people believe in their troops, and they really believe that Ukraine has to win and Ukraine cannot be defeated. But, I guess they don't want to think that Ukraine is just an idea. They want to think that Ukraine is actual territory that so many people have died for. And I think there's also a little bit of this feeling like, why did all those people die? Was there a purpose? Was there a reason? And so they keep fighting. And then so that's, this is what a war of attrition looks like. But they're certainly not ready to give up, and they're not ready to say, my father passed away about 10 years ago from cancer, and I remember when I would talk to him from across the country, I knew, in my mind, that he was on his way out. But talking to my stepmom, going over there, it's this appointment and that appointment and this thing and that test, and you have to do this and this. You kind of get lost in a day-to-day because you're fighting. There's a day-to-day fight. But sometimes certain things are clearly, you can see them clearer when you're further away. And considering the level of impact that U.S. has on what's happening in Ukraine, we're not just a bystander who can referee these two warring sides, as supposedly is our plan right now, that we can referee this fight. We either help Ukraine or we look weak, because it makes us, I feel, just project weakness, and that makes me feel really sick. Because I came to this country as a refugee, and I believe in this country, and I believe in this country projecting strength, and that means supporting our allies, and that means standing up for values. So I'm really hopeful, but that's me.
What age were you when you came over here from Russia, Yuri?
I was 13. Came with my parents, didn't speak really any English, which is, I know, it may sound funny now. But I could read well, but I didn't know what I was reading. And I really just didn't want to be, Russian-speaking, American from, Russian-speaking American. I wanted to be an American from Russia. So I really got involved in my community, and I developed my career and my life, independent of all of that kind of part of my life. But then about 15 years ago, also, as my father passed away, my mother passed away longer than that, I really don't even have anybody to speak Russian to. So it became kind of an opportunity to kind of maintain that part of it. Also, since then, I became a certified Russian court interpreter in a couple of states. So that keeps me, so I joke that if I talk to Russians, I get paid hourly. But, that's, life is a funny journey.
It is. Well, thank you for joining us this morning. Yuri Rashkin, The Rashkin Report. It's on YouTube, and you can do closed captions that auto-translate from Russian to English.
There's even now Rashkin Report in English, which has a very few subscribers, but that's where I put a few videos that I do in English.
Okay, fantastic. Yuri, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Really appreciate it. We are going to go into news, and then after 11 o'clock, we'll be speaking with Christine Rebout from the Janesville Area Convention and Visitors Bureau. You are listening to Your Talk Show on WCLO, Southern Wisconsin's news, sports, and talk.